Crossover is off and running, presented by Taste of Central Florida this Saturday at the World Center Marriott. An unforgettable evening of local dining and unique cocktails, all for a great cause. Taste the impact at tastecfl.org. What about you, Mike? You've been eating good lately? How many hot dogs on the 4th of July for the Bulldog?
I was on an all-inclusive vacation in the Dominican Republic on the 4th of July, and I ate and drank myself senseless. Yes. It was incredible. I've never been on an all-inclusive one of
Oh,
these.
it's incredible.
Oh,
Mallory and I did that for our honeymoon. We went to a Sandals in Jamaica, all you can
ugh.
eat.
And the
It
food is awesome.
the food is fantastic, and you kind of feel like you have to get your money's worth. So you
Right.
just never stop eating.
Prime rib, lobster. They had like a big 4th of July party at the one I was at. They had like, lobster tails, all just laying. I must have eaten like 4 or 5 big lobster tails. I'm surprised I don't have like the gout right now
Well, it,
from
it
all.
could still form. We're only 6 days removed from the 4th of July. I'll get us started with the questions. You might not be the betting man that I am, but I will ask you a question about
Okay.
wagering your life. If you had to bet your life on it in either direction, will Paolo Banchero be with the Magic for the rest of his career? Will he retire with the team? Yeah, and you have to bet your life on either direction. Either he will or he won't. Which would you place your
Bet your
fatal
life?
way? Yeah.
Oh, I
If
would
you could
bet my
pay,
life that he won't. I mean, how many players in the NBA are with their team for life, especially in today's transient world where contracts don't even. I mean, and believe me, I think Paolo Banchero, great contract, great news for the Magic. They got him locked up for the next 5 years, but if the Magic, some God forbid, stumble in the next couple years and they're not as good as we think they're going to be, there's nothing to say Paolo Banchero won't just say, "Hey, get me out of here." 2 years into his deal, I mean, we see it happen all the time in the NBA. And there's also, at the end of players' careers, sometimes if they're chasing rings or whatever, they'll go sign with a good team at the end of their career to try to win a title. So yeah, I would easily bet that he won't be here his entire career.
what if I reframed this and said
Okay.
his most productive
Oh,
years?
then I would bet yes. I would
Okay.
bet my life that he would be here.
Because
Yeah.
that's more so what I meant. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about Shaq with the Celtics. I'm talking
Or
about,
Gary Payton going to the Lakers. Yeah.
yep.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think Paolo Banchero, and again, things change. We know that. Uh no, I think he's committed to Orlando. Obviously, by signing this deal, Orlando's committed to him. But let me ask you this question, which is the obvious question. But hey, I'm the master of the obvious. No, the Magic are flirting, or they're going to go into the apron for the first time in what, 15 years now. The luxury tax apron. They've invested tons of money on this roster. They've invested tons of money in their assistant coaching staff, hiring new assistant coaches, even though they didn't fire any assistant coaches. They're just bringing in new assistant coaches. How what do the Magic have to do this year in Brandon Kravitz's mind to be successful with all the money they've spent and all the expectations that they have?
I really struggle with the championship or bust label or
Yeah.
conference champ, whatever it is, whatever the goal is, and then and bust at the end of it. I
Mhm.
was watching the Netflix documentary Quarterback. The new season came
Yeah.
out, and it was episode 1. They're kind of setting the stage for Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and who's the other one? That's Joe Burrow. And they
Joe
were
Burrow and the
talking about
Batmobile, right?
right. They were talking about the Lions season, and they're playing these clips from the Nick Wrights and the Colin Cowherds of the world, Pat McAfee, in the backdrop of these guys getting ready for the season, and the common refrain regarding the Lions was championship or bust. Well, now I get to watch this with the benefit of hindsight. They were a championship caliber team that health wise fell apart at the end of the year. Does that mean that when we look back on the Lions last season, do you view their season as a bust?
No.
I don't. I view it as they weren't able to get to the finish line based on the law of attrition. I think if the Magic are healthy and everything goes the way it's supposed to go, Suggs is on the court, Desmond Bane is worth the amount the Magic gave up for him. The Magic should be in the conference championship at the end of the year, and then we'll see what happens from there. But I struggle with it's got to be this or bust, because you just don't know how this is going to play out or how good these other teams in the Eastern Conference are going to be. I don't know if I
You
elongated
you
to that
you
question
would
too much.
you would agree though that if they're healthy and they lose in the first round, it is a bust.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So
That
maybe
so
that's the
that
simpler answer than going into my review for quarterback season 2. Uh,
uh,
All
all
right.
right.
Let's see what else I have. UCF. Okay, so Scott Frost made big waves at Big 12 Media Days, saying, "Don't take the wrong job." When
Mhm.
asked what he learned at Nebraska, should Nebraska fans be offended by this statement, as it seems like they are, or is this just simply good life
See,
advice from Scott Frost?
seems like they are. Yeah, they are. Believe me, they are irate with the comment. And should they be on the surface? On the surface, just the quote itself, yeah, they probably should be. I mean, Scott Frost spent 5 years there. He had all the resources, made the big salary. He flopped miserably, and then he says, "Don't take the wrong job." But I really do think that some context needs to be added to this. And I wasn't at Big 12 Media Days when he told the reporter from The Athletic this, but everything I've been told was it was, Scott Frost walks into the room, he's greeted by a bunch of reporters. Hey, how's it going? And the interview hadn't even started yet, and somebody asked him a question, "Hey, what'd you learn about Nebraska?" And he sort of cracks a joke. Hey, don't take the wrong job. To me, that's different if you're cracking a joke and if you're actually serious about it. And he's probably half serious about it, but I think some context should be added. Should Nebraska fans be upset? Yes, but you know why they're probably as upset as they are? They
Because
know
it's
it's the truth.
true.
They
Yeah,
know it's the truth. The truth hurts. And it's not only the wrong job for Scott Frost, it's the wrong job for every coach who's been there since the internet was invented 30 years ago.
it's the wrong job for you. Go back to what Scott Frost was when he left UCF. And now imagine he doesn't leave. Imagine he stays with UCF for another season. They were incredible the next year. They would have been with Scott Frost as the coach. Undefeated seasons, back-to-back years. The hottest, coolest team at the mid-level of
Right.
college football. Scott Frost could have named his job in college football. I'm not saying he should have just stayed at UCF forever.
He could have ta-
Originally,
he could have gone to Florida the year he went to Nebraska.
there you
He
go.
he had that job open to him as well, and he, obviously because he felt obligated to go back to Nebraska and help save his alma mater, he turned down the Florida job as well. So, there's
Exactly.
that.
All right, close it down for us. What
All
you
right,
got?
close it down. We had Chris Perkins, a Miami Dolphins insider from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, on our show earlier this week, and he was talking about the Dolphins and how everybody's your favorite team. Everybody's just making fun of the Dolphins now for trading for a retired tight end and Darren Waller and trading Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith for Minka Fitzpatrick. Obviously, the Steelers got the better of that deal. What do you make of your Dolphins? It just seems like they're becoming almost a laughing stock.
I saw the latest quote from a respected player across the National Football League. Asante Samuel Jr.'s dad said
Mhm.
that the Dolphins had interest in Asante Samuel Jr., but that he wouldn't go there because the Dolphins have no leadership. So that's where we're at in terms of the perception of the Miami Dolphins. And how in the world could you argue with that? Tua isn't exactly a vocal leader. He's gotten better as a quarterback, but you don't view him as a culture setter type of player. Some of the veterans that they've had they've either moved off of them. Jonnu Smith, Raheem Mostert, Teron Armstead just retired. So some of these guys that would be those locker room leaders, whether they're the best players or not, those are the guys that are setting the culture in the locker room. Either those guys are gone because they've retired or the Dolphins moved off of them on their own doing, or they're the wrong guys. Jalen Ramsey, not exactly locker room leader material. Tyreek Hill, not exactly locker room leader material. So unless something happens in terms of the internal culture that we are just not aware of because we're not in that locker room, somebody steps up and just changes the way that this team operates on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. And maybe that is Mike McDaniel. Perhaps he has turned over a new leaf. We know that he has a different demeanor about him, but there's just no reason. I just continue to say this. I hope they prove me wrong. There's no reason to feel optimistic. Maybe they win 7 or 8 games this year, but I just don't know how you could have. I don't know how you could have expectations for anything great this season with the Miami Dolphins.
Wow. The crossover is now over.